Simply XML, our company, was a spin-out of information mapping. And during a 24-year period, we commercialized the structured writing methodology developed by Robert Horn. And we brought it to more than 400,000 authors in 43 countries. So it was a way of analyzing, organizing, and then visually presenting information so that people understood it better. Back in the Stone Age in the 90s, AT&T was our biggest customer, and Lucent was a big user of our structured writing. And when they spun out of AT&T, they used SGML, a markup language, and information mapping to cut their time to market in half from when a customer ordered to when they could deliver the proper switch with the right documentation. So XML is actually a sort of a next level in a way, in a subset, but an important subset of SGML. And it lets you create standard content to achieve content reuse and flexible publishing. And along the way, the content supply chain, all those processes from author to reader have also grown and improved. So modern content management is very different today than it was even a decade ago. But to bring this technology and these processes and these great tools to the enterprise, there has to be an emphasis on simplicity and ease of use in order to get value. So we're going to talk about this today. And we start from the perspective of the information consumer, the person who reads your content. And it has to be accurate. They need information they can perform on and do their jobs right. It has to be just in time, just enough. No one wants a big, long manual anymore. They want just enough when they need it. They want it in their language, and they want it on the device of choice, whether it's paper in a PDF or HTML on the web or in on an iPhone. So the big picture here is that enterprises need this same publishing, reuse, and modern processes that till now have been largely confined to the technical areas. In order to achieve this, you need both information standards and an XML architecture. Most technical content and some technical content is in Microsoft Word. There was a study that at least half of the people who write technical documentation write it in Microsoft Word. TechPubs has gained control of content using powerful, complex, but expensive tools. And you can't afford across the enterprise to use that same tool set. And there are 1 billion Word-based authors who will tell you to go away if you make them use a complicated XML editor or learn 200 data nuances and elements. So I'm going to talk a little just quickly about structured writing and structured markup. A lot of times we see the tech people say that it's the same thing. In my opinion, it isn't. Structured markup to me is the XML and the ability to mark up content in the background, phrases, sections, topics, that sort of thing. It's a machine-oriented facility, and underneath is a rich layer of metadata. Structured markup and XML are frankly ugly to look at, and we'll see that a little later. Structured writing is a means of analyzing, organizing, and presenting information so that people can use it better, so they can perform better, so the reader can look at a piece of information and do something and do it correctly. It uses a lot of different concepts, audience focus, information types, and some principles to put it all together. So there are some challenges, though. Content is generated across the organization by lots of different writers, and they have an opportunity to use each other's content, including the people in the technical publications area. So there are people writing documentation who could use product management sheets and descriptions of products. There are people in the training group who can use a technical description of a product. So there are a lot of writers that can take advantage of these new facilities. And most authors in an organization are non-technical. They write things like policies and procedures and fact sheets. So it's best, if you can, to drive improvement through existing tools and existing human resources. It's not necessary to give everybody a new authoring tool, for instance. So reuse and flexible publishing has generally, in technical groups, paid off very, very well, but it's been time-consuming and expensive. So the beast in the room is Microsoft Word. People love Microsoft Word because you can do anything with it. But if you're implementing standards and trying to get control of your content, Microsoft Word is a beast. Word content is everywhere, and you need to get control of it. If you use XML or data in the technical area, you can't force those tools out on everyone. It just won't work. So somebody needs to own the transition, probably a business executive, and make sure there's an easy and cost-effective transition. So the solution has to be easy to initiate, easy to learn and use, include appropriate training, flexible, and show results. So information consumers and reader needs have changed. Technology has changed. Better tools and processes are available. The implementation of information standards is key. You can't, it's like Lego blocks. They fit together really, really well for all different purposes, but you can't make a Lego block and a jigsaw puzzle piece fit together. So there needs to be, at least underneath, some information standards. And then there are modern tools that weren't available a decade or more ago. Shared repositories, metadata, which is information about the information itself, and it's hidden in the background. The ability to use workflow to control the creation of content, the review of content, the editing of content, and the publishing of content. And then there is the whole issue of review, which traditionally in a Word environment has been done by sending review copies around and then having somebody in a very time-consuming and tedious way put those comments where appropriate into the source material. And then publishing, traditionally, there have been multiple copies in different forms of exactly the same content maintained separately to publish to paper, the web, mobile, etc. So the big picture is that content management involves people, content, and technology. And I have to tell you that 20 years ago I was saying that content management involved people, information, and technology. It's the same demand of the information age. We have to get control and leverage our people, our content, and our technology. Most organizations haven't addressed these at the enterprise level, even if they think they have. Your content is your most valuable asset, along with your people. And to achieve the results that are possible, you have to set standards, centralize some functions, and you will see immediate benefits. So the light is that there are ways to take the best of Microsoft Word and move forward. Why Word? Well, everybody uses it. Everybody needs to control the content in Word, and everybody deserves a better content experience. Your information consumers, your readers, demand it. Okay, let's go. So ContentMapper is a Word to XML authoring tool. It's a plugin for Microsoft Word. XML is driven by these rules called schemas. And you can't just plug a schema into Microsoft Word. The way we achieve both ease of use and the advantages of XML is, first of all, by taking full control of the Microsoft Word user interface. So the author sees Word, which is very familiar, but can't do everything in the world with Word. I can't decide, for example, to use square bullets and you use triangles. We're going to implement a standard around our unordered lists, and everybody will use the same hierarchical structure. And that makes the content developed in this way reusable. So we have a simple user interface that always hides the XML, but saves valid XML. Reuse happens at a number of levels, and I'll demonstrate these at templates, fragments, tables, and reusable components. People can store their content on an individual repository or shared repositories like SharePoint or Alfresco or Companize or Dita2. There are a lot of them that are available that we are integrated with. Once you have XML, the publishing world is your oyster. You can keep this one content base and publish to PDF, HTML, XML, EPUB, etc. It's possible to import and transform stylized Word documents automatically to XML, to Dita, or another structure, and take advantage of modern processes. And we have, of course, flexible licensing models. So what I'm going to do now is show ContentMapper, which is one approach to taming the beast. And I'm going to switch over, God willing here, to Microsoft Word. So here's Microsoft Word, and you'll see that ContentMapper is a plug-in tab on Microsoft Word. And I hope you can see it, that some things are grayed out and are not usable. And that's because we're not really working on anything yet. So I could start a new document, I could open a document, I could import some content. But there's nothing to add properties or metadata to, there's nothing to save, there's nothing to publish. So let's just start real simply. I should mention that it's important to switch your organization to some kind of a topic-based writing. Dita has the concept of a topic. Information mapping had the concept of a map. Simply Structured has the concept, that's our other structure, has the concept of a topic as well. So let's just look at topics. Oh, and this is interesting. So you can set up a reusable template. This was the one for STC's webinar with a title, presenter's name, title and company, in-depth description. But I'm just going to create a basic topic here. And I'm going to do it, I'll just use my file system repository as opposed to SharePoint at this point. So now I've got a baseline topic, and you can see I have something I could save. I could add properties to it or metadata at the level of the topic itself. The writer broadly is going to work in this tab. So using ContentMapper and creating XML underneath is as simple as typing away. Oops. Now, Dita has the concept of a short description, which is an overview. Oh, I complete with my spelling errors, but that's okay. Okay, so I can type away. I can add the kinds of structures that enterprise authors are used to. I can put in, in this example, a bulleted list. Whoops, that was not good. I can put in a new section. And I think your Word-based authors will find this very familiar. Now I talked about reuse, and there are a number of different levels of reuse. The first is a starter template, and these are easy to create. I can put in reusable tables, and these are editable, but they help improve the look and feel and consistency of an organization's content, ultimately improving the brand of the organization through consistency. We have the concept of a fragment, which is usually a section, and it's editable. So I can say, okay, we moved to, it's now an avenue. I can use a picture, and these can either be stored locally or they can be stored in a content management system. Then we also have the concept of a reusable component. So I can go out into my repositories, I can browse in my file system here to certain topics. I can open the topics, and then it's going to ask me to choose what I want to reuse and give me an option of reusing it as a reference, which is not editable, or as a copy, which is editable. In DITA, this is called a content, a conref. In Simply Structured, it's just called a reusable component. So now I've created a topic, and if I wanted to publish it, and let's just see what it looks like. So the XML is ugly but useful. And this is what the repository sees. We'll put it on my desktop. Then we have the facilities of what's called the DITA Open Toolkit, which has a dozen different outputs: legacy PDF, Java help, HTML help, etc. So this is the whole thing of being able to publish to multiple media the exact same content from a content base. We have a publishing wizard that sends the XML back to Microsoft Word and lets you set up a pre-structured look and feel. So this will just take a second. It's going to move the XML back out to Microsoft Word, and it's going to create a template for me. And notice so far you haven't had to see any XML, you haven't had to see any DITA at all. Okay, so here's the XML that computers understand very well. So this is the structured markup. And we've created a DITA topic. It was titled Demo. I put in the short misspelled description. I put in an overview title, the table. Here's the elements in the table. Here's the size of the table and the different settings. I put in a fragment and I changed street to avenue. I put in a picture of a Dell drum. And then I put in this content reference on environmental goals. So I don't know about you, but I never want to really read this, or most of you don't even ever want to understand it or see it again. But here's a PDF created from the same content. I put a cover page on, put a spacer page in, all according to the rules of my publishing. It built a table of contents, and here's the topic that we created along with the content reference to a reusable object. Okay, so we've created a topic. We can add metadata to the topic, and metadata comes at two levels. One level is the topic itself. So I can say that, well, the organizational unit here is human resources. And these can be set up to either be from a pick list like this, or they can be in a free form. At the level of an image or a table, metadata is what we call attributes. So in this case, here's a free form. I can say the audience for this is expert. So I'm just simply marking up the content with the idea that down the road, some sort of a publisher or some sort of person trying to reuse content will be able to access it easily. So that's metadata, properties and attributes. We published to XML. We published to PDF. Now, we support the track changes function in Word, and these are held in the content as, turn it on, as what are called processing instructions, so they don't get validated against the rules of the particular schema. I can put in a comment. So I'm basically using the functions of Microsoft Word for the review, and it's done at the level of a topic. Now, the thing that I think is really neat about both ContentMapper and Data and our other structure is being able to create a larger document from smaller pieces of content. So I'm going to create a data map, and I'm going to do it in SharePoint just so you see a little bit of the facilities of that. So this is my SharePoint repository. It's got a lot of different files in it. This is a preview section, and here's the data map that I'm going to create. And I have some content here in the environmental area where we took the conref from. And creating a larger document is as simple. Oh, I got to wait for my preview. Okay, there's my action plan. Okay, so I'll get rid of my placeholder. So now I have a data map. I can name it. I can page through it with a rendering of it. This will have everything except the images. I can open a topic. Slowly. Alexa had a comment about slowly. She said, never let a computer know you are in a hurry. And that's so true. It's especially true with Microsoft Word. So here's I'll make an edit here. I'm going to save it. and it's going to validate it at this point against the schema rules. And I want you to see one of the facilities of SharePoint, which is pretty common to all the content management systems. When I close this, it's going to ask me if I want to check it in. So I had exclusively checked this out for my use, and I can put a note in here. I can check it in. Then I'll go back over and refresh my data map, and you see I changed to environmental goal. The second thing I can do, the other thing I can do with properties and attributes is I could say, well, this commitment is for an audience of whatever, government. And what this allows me to do is I could think holistically in terms of a large document, but different sections or different topics could be printed for different audiences. So that's one of the facilities of a data map and the ability to do what's called conditional publishing. So far so good. We've created a topic. We've created a data map. I'm not going to save my changes here. So then the last thing I'd like to show is how we move content in. And I'm just going to open a basic Word document. It's a little bit customized. These are custom margins. It's reasonably well styled. So that's a heading 1, heading 2. It's got some graphics in it. It's basically important business information in a business plan. It's got a table. Going back to, whoops, you don't need to go to my email. I'm going to import, and I'm going to do this as a data map. It's just to give you a better idea. If a document is perfectly styled, it's really quite easy to bring all the content into a larger document. In this case, saying, well, maybe I wasn't totally familiar with what was in here, and so I just want to get it into ContentMapper, and on the way in, I want to structure it a little bit better. So I'm going to import that Pampered Pets. I'm actually going to just put it in my file system in a folder called STC. And what ContentMapper is going to do is it's going to first of all look at every time the hierarchy in the document changes. And every time it changes, it's going to say, well, I think this is the new data topic. But then it's going to give me an opportunity to right-click and restructure the content. So I know that these are actually sections. It's actually quite easy to move to a topic or a concept. It's actually quite difficult to move to a data task because people just don't tend to write that way. More than half our customers just use topics and maps here. So here's I won't do the whole thing. I'm going to make sure my structure is valid, which it is. And so now what's going to happen here is ContentMapper is going to actually use style sheets, and it's going to transform those word styles to XML, and it's going to put this content into a larger document, in this case a data map. So it's now transforming the content, and here it is in a data map with separate sections. So I can, once again, press the right button, huh? So here's my data map of that Pampered Pets document. I can open a, now I have data topics here, and I can And I can edit away. I could add a short description if I want. I'm just using a local repository, so there's no check-in, check-out function here. And when I refresh, you see I made the changes here. So that's ContentMapper with Simply Data. We have another structure called Simply Structured. It tends to appeal to people who think in terms of larger documents. So it has more hierarchical levels to it. So it has the idea of a publication, and I can put some content at that level. I hope you see it, the idea of a collection, and reuse is possible at every level here. So it creates a nice hierarchy, and it's useful for people who think in terms of larger documents. I could reuse chapters, I could reuse topics from here. So that's my demonstration of ContentMapper. Let's see if we have any questions. Deborah, can you help me out here?
Yeah, Gary wanted to know what version of Word is required for this. Okay.
Actually, when ContentMapper installs, it will figure out your version of Word, and we now support anything Word 2010 or higher. We have recently switched to the latest .NET architecture, which if you're technical at all, it's 4.6.2, but it supports Word 2010 and higher.
Another question came in from Jim. He said, I may have missed it, but how do you reuse content single source?
That was, let me just go back over to the other, other document. So I can reuse content and insert it over here from a reusable table, a fragment, but then also component reuse, which takes me over to my repository, and it basically lets me reuse any content that has an ID attached to it. So in this case, I went out and looked at my environmental content. I opened something up and I could page through it and pick to reuse it as either a reference or a copy.
Another question came through from Amy Burns. So for those of us really new to DITA, if there are already documents, I can just import them into ContentMapper and it will automatically map them to DITA. Do they need to be formatted with styles first to work best?
Actually, they don't have to be formatted and styled from a publishing standpoint. The way ContentMapper works is we're using XSLT style sheets to move back and forth between Microsoft Word and DITA. If you already have DITA content, it can be opened, generally be opened in ContentMapper. We use a subset of the DITA tag set. There are, at last count, about 640 elements that are possible in DITA, and if you're going to use a huge number of them, you're probably using an XML editor. So our Simply DITA is about 100 of the elements that are easily supported in Word. So if the content uses the Simply DITA schema, it was created and stored in your repository, it just opens up nice and fine in ContentMapper. If you have specialized DITA, we have developed for, at least for Oxygen at this point, the ability to open specialized DITA by what's called generalizing it and then re-specializing it. So we often work in an environment where if people are using DITA in the technical areas, they might be using an XML editor, Oxygen, ArborText, XMetal, and we can move the content in and out quite easily. What is true is that if you have specialized DITA, it's probably best to edit it in the XML editor rather than ContentMapper. But for the basic sections, tables, images, captions, that sort of thing. You can open up a DITA document that was created elsewhere and work on it. That's a good question.
Donna wanted to know, is this a SaaS tool, SaaS?
No, it is not. It works. SaaS would generally mean up in the cloud. We work on the client versions of Word. So we work under the Microsoft operating systems, Windows 7, 8, and 10. If you have a Macintosh, we work on it if you are running those in a VM. So it doesn't work. The cloud-based version of Microsoft Word is a totally different architecture, and it's really quite limited.
And the last question that I see from Barry is, he's not familiar with DITA. Does DITA require someone to write underlying XML schemas and FOSIS? Sorry.
So DITA is, if you think of, well, at least the simplistic way I think of XML is it's a language. You can write or express a lot of different things in that language. DITA is a subset of that language that's a standard, and it's managed by an open source group known as OASIS. So it's basically a set of rules that drive the XML. So DITA has become quite popular in technical publications areas. It's less popular for things like policies and procedures or outside of the technical areas. So DITA is, over the years there have been different subsets of XML. There is, in the defense industry, something called S1000D. And a lot of high-end publishers use something called DocBook. So these are basically subsets of XML that define different elements and terms and properties. I hope that helps. Give us an email if you need to know more about it. But you can go to the OASIS website through Google, and there's more information than you could read in a lifetime. Thank you very much. I'll go back to my presentation for a minute here. If you need to get in touch with us, we're great with email. Some of the use cases: implementing a writing standard, publishing to multiple media from the same source material, efficiency reuse. We pretty much covered those. Compliance and regulatory was actually where we got started, in an oil company that was having compliance issues. And it's important to control that content and develop it to make sure it's, first of all, accurate, but second of all, that it goes through the right processes for approval. Some people feel stuck in PDF, or they've got these beautiful InDesign documents, but they want to get them on the web. And currently, I don't know about you, but if a PDF is more than 10 pages long, I really don't want to see it on my computer. I'd print it off. So people are stuck in InDesign or PDF. They want to get to HTML, or they want to get to the iPhone as a published media. They need to get back to an architecture that supports that, and that would be XML. Structured writing, I mentioned this earlier. At this point, 400,000 or 500,000 people have been trained and are using tools like FS Pro and DocuTools, and they're sort of stuck too in terms of flexible publishing. So we can move that content into XML, give people an easy user interface like they're used to, but get them to the modern age of content management and publishing. People wanting to move DITA out to the enterprise, they've had such great success in tech pubs, lowering costs and serving customer needs, but to bring it out, it has to be simple. I mentioned earlier training people wanting to use documentation content, and marketing people feeding into the whole content database. We've seen a number of instances where large organizations have a very high-end, sophisticated, complicated publishing system that produces something that's beautiful out of DocBook. They've been using it for 10 years. and they want to bring new authors and new content into that. We found we had a financial services company where we moved their DocBook content over to Simply Structured so that an average person could actually edit and create new content. And they say that if you publish to 3 languages or more the same content, this will pay for itself. So you have to tame the beast. That's Microsoft Word. The advantage, the author sees a Word user interface. The repository sees XML. Pretty easy to implement, very little training. Most of our customers give a demo to their users and a quick reference card, and off they go. Oh, no, I didn't mention this earlier. So one fundamental thing is separating content creation from content publishing. There have been studies that say that people using desktop publishing, people creating a Word-based document and desktop publishing it, spend from 30 to 50% of their time making it look good for desktop publishing. Well, what looks good to me and what looks good to Deborah and what looks good to you might all be different things. So these things are constantly tweaked. By separating content creation from publishing, you gain the ability of efficiency of reuse, but you also get a more common look and feel. Structured authoring and structured markup are both important. Work with the modern technology. You don't have to learn XML or DITA. And it's relatively easy if we see a custom situation to really meet the needs, some complex needs in a very simple user interface. Some other authoring tools, they have different bases. Some are Word macros, and the Word macros, if you use them, they're great for standardization of content. They tend to fall down in terms of multi-channel publishing. There are products like Smart Docs. It's a great product. If you're just going to stay within Microsoft Word, it lets you add metadata and do reuse and publishing, but it's not going to integrate well to the XML world. XML Author is another Word to XML authoring tool, eye for eye. So these will be in your slides. You can go out on the web and look them out, look them up. November 29th, we'll be giving a webinar on structured writing. And this, my background was in structured writing, and when we did our first courses with ContentMapper, we had a course on Simply DITA and a course on Simply Structured. And all of a sudden it hit me that what we really need to do is bring structured writing to a new level. So we've created a 6 to 8 hour web-based and structure-led course that's meant for the enterprise to be able to create structured content with the information consumer in mind. So we'll be doing that on November 29th. Our view of topic-based writing is that people need a topic-based architecture. There are certain types of information based on reader performance. Knowing the difference between a procedure and a process, and what is a principle and what is a fact or a reference is important. Principles, how to put content together, organize it for the eventual reader. And right now, there's a big change happening where, yeah, the reader is the person who has to perform, but it also might be a bot that's filtering through content using metadata or even whole text search. So you have to write for both kinds of audiences. XML architecture underneath, how to use metadata, how to create larger documents like we showed, how to think about reuse. We have people at times who say, oh, this is great, I can reuse everything. But that doesn't make any sense. Somebody has to maintain and administer that. So we have some helpful tips for how to reuse and the different publishing options. So that's our webinar, and assuming you're all still connected today, we didn't have any technology glitches I know of, and you can send me an email, look at our website, sign up for our mailing list or whatever, and we'd love to work with you. We do free trials, and we always start with a meeting where I want to make sure that we're going to hit the target, that your need actually matches our solution and our philosophy. So thank you very much. I've enjoyed it, and good luck to everybody.